Hey, Kim.
Hey there, Felice. Another day of a wonderful conversation about work. I feel like we're getting that. It's like we're getting our own therapy in too as we help other people. We're getting our own therapy in too because this is such a part of who we are and how we live our lives and how we get our dreams made. So important to really have these conversations because you don't have to be stuck doing it wrong when there's so many opportunities to get it right.
And don't we all need some therapy when it comes to work? I mean, they just, and I'm not talking about the EAP program. Don't think that the EAP program is really for you. I'm talking about it. We all need a little counseling, a little help when it comes to work issues, but go get your own.
Right. Go get your own. Don't take it to work to get it. Get it
Don't,
here. Podcast.
don't take it to work again. So why don't we start off, Kev? I mean, speaking about getting it wrong, right? Let's dive into just sort of this, what I like to call walk it like you talk it. Now, I know that's somebody's song out there. I'm not trying to steal their song,
No stealing. We don't steal at work.
not trying to take their song. But you and I have come across some instances where people, what they are doing online or even out in public that's just caught on somebody's phone or whatever is inconsistent with
Right.
the image that they are trying to portray in terms of their professional brand. What are your thoughts on this? Because we were talking, you were telling me like what your brand should be. Help us understand.
So when you go to work at company X, let's say you're working at the largest tech company in the world. Well, the tech company has its own brand, right? It has its own way of approaching problems. It has its own image. And when they hire you as a representative of that image, but within that image you're always bringing your whole self. So now your image may be a little different from theirs or it may be identical to theirs. It's always nice when the images work together. But whatever the images are, you have to be clear about what you're bringing to the table, right? When I get to work with Kim, I get authenticity, I get directness, I get job done, I am focused, I work hard, I do whatever it takes to get it done. And that has to be consistent. I can't be that person on Monday. This is my favorite example. I used to work with somebody, and on Monday, she would be dressed like Annie Hall. I'm not making this up. You remember how
Like
Annie
who?
I know I'm dating myself. I know I am. So I'm gonna have to do lots of descriptors. But there's a movie called Annie Hall. And in Annie Hall, and I'm just about to remember the actress's name, she wore all these like Calvin Kleiny clothes, like where the dress goes to your ankles, and it's a little boho. It's a little so it's up to your neck. There's sleeves and it's really long, and you're not showing off your shape, but you're professional, but it's a little, it's not like corporate-y, it's more of a boho-y thing you have going on. Friday, she's Tina Turner. So she's gone from Annie Hall, which is the total opposite end of the spectrum, to Tina Turner. So on Friday, she has on a mini skirt. She's got on a bolero jacket. Her hair is fashionably longer, way longer than it was on Monday. And it's starting to have some blonde streaks if I look a little closer. So now this person and that person are not cousins. They're not even friends, right? You don't see Annie Hall hanging out with Tina Turner, and Tina has never hung out with Annie Hall. And there's a reason for that because their worldview is very, very different. Now, we're talking about, I'm a lawyer, so I'm usually in a legal environment. There's never a time where bolero works during the workday. It's just right there at your breasts, and it's just kind of holding them out together and saying hi. And then, of course, the
Well,
mini skirt doesn't help that process. So, if you want people to take you seriously, you have to be consistent. Because what they'll say is, well, Tina Turner doesn't want to be taken seriously. We're going to hang with her today. But Monday, when it's time to make a serious decision about how we're going to decide how this project is run, we're not picking faux Annie Hall because we know that it's really Tina Turner. And we don't want that. We don't want
well,
it.
hold on,
We
Kim.
can help that.
Hold on, because it's been 8 minutes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't know it had been 8 minutes.
Because you know I love me a good wig And I might have a bob today. Don't get used to it because tomorrow I might have longer hair, the length of your hair now. I have some streaks. I don't know. It might be curly. I don't know.
Okay.
You mean to tell me that I can't be diverse, have a diversified portfolio in terms of how I look when I go to work, or people are not going to take me seriously?
Well, let me put it to you this way. Work if you're Beyonce, you can wear your hair different every 20 minutes of the day. I think nobody will even see it as anything other than your creativity. I think though, if you work in a corporate setting or you work in a law firm, changing it up. I remember once I told somebody in my office, "Oh my God, I'm going to get braids for summer." And the guy looked at me. This is a true story. He looked me in the eye and he said, "But where will you work?" Now that was before the Crown Act, so it was legal for him to say that to me. What I'm saying to you, and again, it's a generational view. I'm not saying that people can't make changes in how they look, but if you change it up too much, think about this. You change it up too much, it's hard for the people that work with you to follow it. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying change it up at home, change it up at night, change it up on the weekend because that's who you are. I'm saying at work, it becomes hard for people are trying to they're already trying to put you in a box already. Before you got there, it didn't matter what your hair looked like. But the more you change it, the more you change the color, the more you change the style, it becomes hard for people to follow that. So that's my opinion. What my observation has been in the workplace. It was not good for my girl who was Annie on Monday, and she's brilliant all day long.
Yeah,
But
I
it was hard for
agree.
what the firm to follow that. So if she wants to be an advertising executive, it might be okay. It might be okay, but not
Okay,
necessarily.
okay. I'm going to respectfully agree and disagree. And the reason for that is I always tell people that first of all, people have to get to know you and your work. They
Yes,
have to come to respect you and your work.
correct.
Let your work do the talking for you.
That's
Then,
true.
if you start wanting to be creative, you can start being a little bit more creative because they understand that, oh, that's just Felice. That's her style. That's what she does, right? But she's excellent at what she does. Now, I do think there's limits to that. I don't think that you can be, Barbara Streisand on one day and then be Lil Kim on another day. Here I am dating myself,
Some
right?
people do.
I don't think you can do that, but I do think you need to be aware of your audience, where you work, and they have to accept that you're the stylish person. I have had many compliments from almost all of my superiors at work about my style, but I always switch it up. But I will say, when I wore braids, and I'll say this for my last role, I don't care if people say or think about that. But when I wore those braids, there was just, honey, you would have thought I walked in with a grill of diamond teeth and a hoodie at the board meeting. You would have thought that I walked in chewing gum, smacking on gum, blowing bubbles in the meeting. And and I hate to say it, I think it's because of the braids, and I don't think people have come to accept that.
Again, it's up to you. I mean, these are all choices. This is not me saying you can't or don't. This is me saying these things have consequences, and that if you're prepared to deal with them, I mean, it may be. I will tell you that you can dress a certain way, but there's a day when you may not want to dress that way. When I'm in front of a jury, I don't want them worried about the length of my skirt, my what my legs look like, how much cleavage is showing. It's not about being my authentic me, because I'm there to represent somebody else. So what I look like,
Mm.
if it's going to distract from their ability to rule for my client, then I must be as bland as possible, and then my work will stand out, because it's my argument that will get them to come out the way they do. So that, again, and some of it may be generational. I do think that there's more room than there may have been at some other times, but just like you said, sometimes the more things change, the more they stay the same. Braids are still one of those things where people want to question. It is okay now. I absolutely would agree that it's okay, but what I'm saying is, if you switch it frequently, and you switch from one to, so if you always wear braids, and you always wore braids, and you have a nice, really,
And they hired you with braids. They
they
interviewed
hired
you
you
with
with
braids.
braids. That's right. They interviewed you with braids, and you wearing a, I find more and more, I see women wearing their hair natural and braids, and they're very comfortable, conservative, appropriate styles. But again, if you came in with the bob, and now a week later you got the braids, there are people who are going to be not able to follow that in the spirit that it's meant. They're not going to see you as a creative. And you're right, it's going to take time. Once they know who you are, and that this is just a part of your personality, that's one thing. But you've got to take the time to figure out which place you work at. Sometimes people haven't thought through where they work. They don't work
Right.
at the open-minded, we are the world, we only focus on your workplace. They're at the place where people are judging every single thing you do, and they're looking, they have started the day going, what can I find out about Felice that's not as polished and perfect as she appears? And they're looking, and every day they're looking. Now maybe that's just because you picked the wrong place to work, and you're going to go work somewhere else soon. Or maybe you're going to help them to see that what they're doing doesn't make sense. Or maybe just not in the right place at the right time.
I think that there's going to have to be an understanding of what the expectations are of the organization, from you, and what you expect from the organization in terms of support. But I agree that you have to know what your audience is, and you have to position yourself. I have my podcast, Beauty Not Boundaries. I always talk about, you want to set yourself up so that you're not creating boundaries for yourself, right? You're bringing your most beautiful, authentic self to work without putting up boundaries. Sometimes we put up boundaries and we don't realize it, because we are committed to expressing ourselves through how we look. And that's okay, but it's a decision that you make, and you have to be willing to live with whatever the, I don't want to call it a consequence, but whatever the feedback is, whether it's, verbal or nonverbal feedback that you receive based on how you look. And I don't want to just focus on us and braids, because I've seen women come to meetings with wet hair. Like, why are you on a professional meeting with wet hair? Like,
That
you
damn
just got out
Zoom
of the shower. Why is that appropriate? It's not
is
appropriate.
not appropriate ever. I don't care
So
what
it's
kind of
not just the
hair.
braids, it's other
Yeah,
folks getting on with
yeah,
wet hair,
yeah.
or just looking disheveled, not presenting your best self. So I want to jump into something else, Kim, because we talked about this. I mean, you mentioned cleavage. And lately, I've been seeing a lot more cleavage bearing women in the workplace. And even on LinkedIn, I'm seeing them in professional photos where maybe I set the girls up a little bit higher in this professional photo. I, you know, I am younger, but I'm still old school enough to know that that's not appropriate. Because why? I don't want to see a man and his chest hair and his stuff. So why do I want to see it from a woman?
Well, I think you're correct. I'm a little concerned about this trend towards showing cleavage and chest hair and abs and all these things from everybody because it's work. I mean, you're there to work. It's not vacation. It's not my friends and I are going to the pool. And I think what people haven't always thought through is, okay, so today I'm showing off my girls. What happens tomorrow in the meeting when I'm trying to get my assets from my brain to be the focus? Are people going to be listening, or they're going to be hoping the girls are going to make another appearance? And the same for the guys. I once did an investigation where I was interviewing, and I had no reason to think that this guy had done anything wrong. None. In fact, I wasn't even I was investigating for a person that he was doing some things with, but not necessarily for him. And then all of a sudden I started getting stuff like, well, he has six-pack abs. And I was like, how does anyone know that he has? I never met this guy. And people were talking about how he had six-pack abs, and apparently he was showing them off at the off. I mean, how do you sit at a computer and show off your abs? I don't know. But what I do know is he wasn't working. And I will tell you that I am part of his pink slip, because the very fact that he was already having this dalliance with somebody else, and now I know it wasn't her alone, it was him and her. His six-pack abs had to find another place to install themselves because no work was being done because everybody was focused on these abs. And I do that on purpose to use the male perspective of it so people see it's not just a woman thing, it's a people at work thing. And I don't know why we think that because we see it on TV or we saw it at the concert that we can then bring it to work. I've been doing a lot of mediations where women are not just showing off the girls there, but on their social media, they're showing off parts of the girls that no one should see.
Can we
And
talk about that? Because
yeah,
I want
why?
to really, I want to focus in on that just for a little bit.
Okay, okay.
Because I know people,
Hmm.
you know people, we've
Unfortunately,
seen people who, for example, someone is, uh, an accountant and says, I want your business. Come to my firm, bring your business to my
bring your
firm.
money.
Let me represent you. But when you go on that person's Instagram page, posing in bikinis and doing, posing with your butt out and, holding up drinks and, just doing like I don't want my accountant doing that. And I want my accountant to have the wherewithal to know to not post that.
Well, I've been talking to law students all around the country, and my favorite thing to say is, I don't want to be doing your job background search and see your naughty witch costume, because I don't want to know that about you when I need you to get this legal advice from my multi-million dollar client. So that I find that there's a lot of stunned silence when I say that, which really scares me even more. But there are a lot of people who just haven't made the connection that HR people, and I went to a very high end seminar, and all the HR people in the room said, first thing we do before we make that offer is check that social media. First, not the fifth thing, not after they make you the offer, not after they did the rah-rah dance over your grades and your credentials. No, the first thing they do is check your social media, because once you show off your naughty witch or your turn up with the drink and the bikini, pretty much you've already made their decision for them, and they got these other five people who don't have this issue. Because remember now, you can put on something that on your social media that's offensive to the clients. The goal of being a lawyer is to have clients. So if we're going to offend the people who must hire us, then we're going to have fewer people who can do that.
And even if it's not to be a lawyer, the customers, whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, it,
And
it counts for
what
everything.
does this go to, Kim? Why is this problematic? To me, it goes to judgment. Yes, I know that some folks may feel like, well, it's just an outfit. Yeah, I'm not really focused on the outfit, really. I'm focused on your level of maturity and your judgment. And if you can't demonstrate sound judgment as a professional, I can train somebody. I can train on judgment.
Yeah, I mean, the accountant, the lawyer, the Indian chief, the CEO. I mean, all it's bad. The architect, you don't want the person building your house, and you worry they were having too much drink the night before. I mean, you care about this because you care about whatever your project is or whatever your interaction is with that professional. So it is important, and I just think that we don't always think it through. When you have a social media where I can track everything you did all last week, day by day, hour by hour, you're probably not spending a lot of time on your accounting principles. You're probably not spending a lot of time running that company. And so as a result, people just draw the conclusion that this isn't a high priority. Now, this could be your vacation and you just want to post your vacation, but you look at all those teachers who got in trouble on those vacations because they posted drinks or they, and again, I'm not saying they shouldn't have been entitled to do that, but more and more you see clauses in people's employment that relates to their behavior not at the place of employment. And if you have such a thing or you are in such a profession, make sure you know what it is, know what it says, and know what it means. Know what things you can't do. I got 5 friends who can't compulsively stop themselves from taking a picture of everything that happens. I don't want to be in every picture. I
And
don't
not
want to be
everything is everybody's business. It's not. It just isn't. Not
Mm,
everything needs to be posted. Some
mm-mm.
things just need to be your business and the business of those who are in the immediate event with you, right? Not
Yeah,
everybody else in the whole wide world. So let's turn a little bit more here on this, just this how we behave and how we engage um out in public. Because what if I don't post something, but somebody has me on camera?
right. Right. Well, you do have to let your friends know where you stand. I've been known to say to people, I don't want this, I don't, I'm not necessarily not, I don't want this posted, but I don't want 100 pictures of me posted from today. If you have a select one you want to pick, preferably one I've seen in advance, I'm okay with that. I was there. I'm not trying to deny that I go anywhere and that I have friends, but I really like to keep my personal life private because I recognize that when you expose, I mean, even doing this podcast, when you expose how you feel about something, it might bring some, as much as we're hoping that it will bring people some relief and some insight so that they can carry it into their work life. There may be people who see it differently, and I'm not prepared to engage with them while I'm walking home because now I've posted the address of my home and what time I come home and when I'm going to be there. That's not what I'm putting myself in the game for.
Absolutely. I think that we need to be just a lot more mindful that we are in a cell phone era and that people will record, and we need to be mindful of what we're doing because it could be recorded
Yeah.
and it
Look,
could very well be posted. So is there anything else in this space of, walking like you talking? If you say you represent something, let your walking match it. Don't, let's be consistent. If we say that we're a polished professional, it doesn't mean you have to be a square. It doesn't mean that you can't have flavor and style. It just means being mindful about what you're putting out there. Is there anything else in this space that you've come across where you feel like, that maybe that wasn't a good look. This is inconsistent with the type of brand that this person is trying to convey.
yeah, I think the key is, okay, yes, and you alluded to this at the beginning. If you have been in this game, whatever it is, accounting, architecture, fashion, advertising, and over time you've evolved and you've developed a style and you're known for switching it up. And that's part of how people are going to interact with you and do the things they do with you. Well, then okay, it's fine. But if it's your sixth day at work and nobody knows you and nobody knows what your brand is and nobody knows why you do what you do and how that impacts your actual work, then it's good to be aware that the two may not match. And you should be paying attention to the environment that you're in. You can get cues about all of this. Don't go in blind. Watch and see what other people do. Some of what works for them will work for you, and some things they do won't work for you at all. So then that the truth of it is that's when I can break the rules. And when I know that there are no rules anyway. But I think at the end of the day, you are building your own authentic brand, and engaging that brand with other brands takes time. You can't just throw your flavor at people the first week or the first 2 weeks. They've got to still get to know you first, and then you can bring your flair. I don't really dress, I think, like the average person who does what I do. I do bring my own style to it. It would be no fun if I had to wear blue, black, and brown every time I got dressed. I'd be mad about that. Would never be able to wear red glasses and red lipstick.
Well, I'm
But
never
I
wearing that, and Imma always have pink lips, and, you know,
oh, there you go.
but at the same time, I am very careful, and I try to encourage other people to be very careful about, and consistent in what they put out there that reflects their level of maturity and judgment, because that's what it boils down to, maturity and judgment. Like, what kind of judgment do you have? What about, Kim, when people get in fights online or on social media? I had an incident, right? I had an incident where um a colleague had gotten into a spat with somebody on social media. And the colleague had their job title and place of employment listed under their name when they got in the spat. What that message, first of all, and it was just all over social media. And the way that I found out about it is that the other person on the other end, actually sent messages to people within the organization. So we all knew. Again, what's your level of judgment? You're here to be a professional. First of all, are you working if you're on social media telling people off? Second of all, what's the level of judgment that you're exercising? Even if somebody comes for you, that doesn't mean you have to go back for them. So what? These are trolls on the internet. I don't even have that kind of time. Why even respond? Because now you have demonstrated to your boss and to your organization that you lack the wherewithal to just say, you know what, I'm not going to allow them to drag me into it with your job title and your organization listed.
Some people really don't have a sense for what their brand is, because when you're faced with a choice like that to be embroiled in something, you can walk away. And people are not thinking at the moment that they hit send that it's forever. That even if you take it down, somebody can screenshot it. So if you haven't made peace with all those things, I can get you in a fight and help you lose your job all day long. I have a rule. I don't send things out over social media that are negative, ever. You know why? Because I really believe that social media is like a multiplier of things. I mean, and that is my worldview. So if I send something negative, it is like I am multiplying the negativity, and I don't know where it's going to wind up or where it's going to end. If I am not comfortable with you, and I would like to share that with you, I have a whole language for that, right? A language that can be repeated in front of other people, a language that can be printed, should it be printed by someone, but it is never governed by what language you put out for me. And so that's what people have to be thinking about. Is something that you don't learn in school. Nobody says to you, you know, don't engage with people if you have to engage in a way that's different from what your brand is. That's not a, there's no class on that. And we have to train ourselves that there are people who would embroil us in these things, because it's the only way they can show people who we really are. And if you're allowing yourself to be in those positions, it's because you haven't thought that through. And I've seen it a lot over my career, and it's always bad. It doesn't even matter if it wasn't meant for bad, it winds up being bad.
Your intentions sometimes don't matter. And
Mhm.
I'll say to the contrary, I was raised with that. It was just different. It was an old school. You can get out, you can go to school and get in fights and do all of that if you want to, but you can't come back to this house and come back here. So
We'll
some
bring it back.
drama's happening, right? You mind your business, and I don't need you out. I'm not sending you to school to fight. I'm not sending you to school to be with mean girls and cause issues. I'm sending you to school to learn. If you feel like you can't go to school to learn, then you can't be here.
So I got something for you. I got something for you. I'm sending you to work every day to get work done. And if you feel like while you're at work that you can't focus on work and you're distracted by social media, then maybe you shouldn't be there. You should be somewhere else where that's what people do. And I think that boils up kind of almost everything we say. It comes out, we go into work. It's about work. If it was fun, it would be called fun, but it's called work because we're working.
But I think that starts earlier, Kim. Do you? I think it starts, like I said, your upbringing. Because I'm sorry, once you get in the workplace, it's a little late. I mean, we're trying to help everybody. But a lot of this is like you spoke, on a different episode, you talked about your mother knew you weren't hanging out in the alley, right? You didn't even have no question. Why? Because she already knew that those are inconsistent with the values of this house and this upbringing, right? So I think it starts earlier. And, you have to know that you can't be out doing it. Listen, don't mean to run on, but I remember when the riots after Rodney King's unfortunate assault and battery by the LAPD. There was a lot of looting. And I remember, I'm dating myself here. I was sitting there with my grandmother looking at TV. And my grandmother said to me, I bet not see not one thing come in this house. Not one, or not a sock, not a bottle of Gatorade, nothing. Right? My mom too. Nothing. Better not see anything. Now, I was really young at the time, but impossible. But that was still the message. Like, I don't care what everybody else is out there doing.
That's right.
We don't do that.
That's right. Well, that's why you can do so well at work because you're not so caught up in trying to do what everybody else is doing the way everybody else is doing it that you could focus on the reason why you're there. And I mean, we can't say that enough to people. That's how people get caught up at work. I'm telling you, this is how it happens. Something bad happens at work, and you got this crazy social media out there. Who's going to believe you? Who's going to believe you if your lifestyle is that you are, scantily dressed with, lots of people in public places. And now you want to say that somebody behaved inappropriate. And the people are looking at the picture going, inappropriate? Inappropriate, and you can't figure out what went wrong. And it's because you have not recognized that work includes all of these other situations. Now, if you don't
Yeah.
want that, go work for yourself. Now, when you work for yourself, your social media is totally on brand for you. But I bet you, when people start their own businesses, they don't want that either. They want their brand to be associated with crazy. It's just as simple as that.
And nobody's saying that anybody deserves sexual harassment or
Nope.
whatever because of
Nope.
what you put on your social media.
That's right.
What I am saying is you need the benefit of the doubt
That's
all of
right.
the time,
That's right.
right? And you deny yourself the benefit of the doubt when you are putting things on your social media, out in public, even if it's not on social media, somewhere else, that suggests that maybe what you are presenting to the world at work or in other social circles is really false. That's not really, yeah.
Or that your version isn't consistent with your lifestyle. How about that? It's hard to believe that somebody touched you inappropriately at work if people are touching you inappropriately in your video on your feed on Instagram, and they are clearly not just your significant other, that's a problem. So that means that you're not sure what an inappropriate touch is. And that is beyond benefit of the doubt.
Exactly. So as we wrap up, do we have any let's give 3 points each on what we think, some guidance for folks in this space of being consistent with what you put out there, making your walk match your talk.
I would say be clear about who you are and who you take into the workplace. I would say try to make everything as consistent as you can. I'm not saying don't be yourself and don't be have flavor and only wear black every day, because that will make people wonder about you too. But what I am saying is, when you're being true to yourself, just remember you're being true to yourself at work. It's not you're being true to yourself with your girl on the weekend or at the spa or at the beach. You are there to work. So all the things need to add up to the view of I'm here to work. You got
And
anything?
and I would say you could have a private page for just your friends and family, but be mindful that sometimes people screenshot. So you think you have a
Even
private page, but people are screenshot and still sending it out. Anyway,
that's like telling a lawyer it's off the record. Is it ever off the record? Is there really ever? And is it ever off? Probably not.
I agree with everything you just said, and I would say also just put yourself in the shoes of a client or a customer or your boss or the board, right? And ask yourself, would you entrust this individual with this, highly confidential information or high stakes type of information, or, very serious financial data or whatever, based on the judgment that you see them exercising or the lack thereof? I think that's my biggest point. I do think at the end of the day, you have to bring your authentic self, because even if you try to fake it, it will come out.
Yep.
You just need to be in an environment and in a space where it's what you are, where you are is consistent with who you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's again, I always say this. That's why they call it work. If it was easy and anybody could do it, then they wouldn't need you. The reason they have you is because you bring something special and extra to the table. But what you bring has to enhance. It can't be detracting.
Absolutely. And I always say in my training, I do professional dress training all over the place. I always say, how you present yourself sends a message about where you are, or where you've been, where you are, and where you are going.
Absolutely.
What is the message you want to send?
Amen.
And with that, I think we have encouraged everybody to just be consistent, walk the walk like you talk the talk. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Work It, the podcast where we get honest about your situation at work. I'm Felice.
And I'm Kim, and we do this so you can work it.
Thank you.